Welcome or welcome back. This is Raina in the World, and today we are talking all about garden planning. I'm gonna get into all the details about what my hopes and dreams are for this year's garden, what things I'm planting, where I'm gonna plant them, the different planting methods I'm gonna use, and we'll talk a little bit about the tools that I'm gonna use in order to figure all of that out. So join me to learn more. In years past, like I'm sure many of you, I have just stuck some seeds in the ground or stuck some seedlings in the ground, and some of them lived, some of them didn't live. I certainly was not fully maximizing my potential as far as growing, and it was not in any way offsetting my grocery budget with the stuff that I was growing. This year, my goal is to really just grow more food, to really produce more, to learn some preservation techniques, and to start building up my freezer, my pantry, my fridge shelves full of beautiful homegrown produce. That is what I'm really hoping to build the skill in this year, so that, you know, in years in the future, I can work towards building up a homestead where I'm providing a lot of the food that I eat homegrown. That is the ultimate goal. That's the hope, it's the dream. We'll see if this year we can take a little bit of a step towards that by being more strategic about the way that we plant. So, to that end, the things that we're planting this year, we are planting things that we actually eat. I know that that sounds too obvious, but how many times have you been, you know, in your local hardware store, you pick up a packet of seeds and you're like, oh, this is $1 or $2. I should just throw this in the ground and see what happens. But when you just start things without any plan, sometimes, you know, as we do, you don't always get the best results. Or maybe you have great results, but you end up with way too much of things that you don't actually enjoy eating. So things that I, you know, have grown in the past but probably won't grow this year, things like radishes. Radishes are cool. You know, I might eat 1 or 2 in a season. They, you know, probably grow really well where I am because they're cold hardy, but I don't eat a ton of radishes. So that's not a thing that I'm going to grow a whole lot of. So really nixing those things that I really don't eat a ton of and focusing on the things that I really do eat a lot in my normal life. Things that I do eat a lot of are bell peppers, onions, tomatoes. So those are really going to be the heart of this year's garden, along with a bunch of other things as well. So I want to grow bell peppers, I want to grow hot peppers, maybe even make my own hot sauce. That would be really cool. But certainly I want to grow a lot of tomatoes, and I want to learn some skills later in the year in preservation of tomatoes, making things like tomato sauce and diced tomatoes, and canning things like marinara, pizza sauce, having those on my shelves to pull from for my weekly meals. Also, onions, garlic. I use that stuff in, you know, almost daily for dinner meals. So things like onions and garlic are also things that I would want to grow. Basically, my plan for what food crops to put in the ground this year is, do I eat it? Do I eat it on a regular basis? Do I eat a lot of it or a little of it? And things that I grow a lot. Things that I typically eat a lot of, I want to grow in larger quantities, or even supplement by buying from local farmers so I can learn how to preserve it. And in things that I don't eat too much of, I will grow less of this year. So I have made a bit of a list of things that I'm really interested in growing. As I already said, bell peppers or sweet peppers, hot peppers, tomatoes. Particularly, I'm thinking about getting more of the indeterminate varieties of tomatoes. So tomatoes that, rather than building all of their foliage and then having one big bumper crop harvest of tomatoes at the end of the season, I'd like the one to have the types of tomatoes that just keep growing throughout the season, that, you know, get bigger and bigger and taller and bushier and just keep putting on more and more tomatoes every week. so that I can grow as many as possible. Onions, potatoes, sweet potatoes as well. So I'm looking into getting some sweet potato slips that I can plant out. That's something I haven't grown before, but I do eat a lot of. So that's going to be a really worthwhile experiment for this year, and hopefully we're pretty successful in it. I want to have garlic, some carrots. Carrots grow really, really well here. I don't eat a ton of carrots, but I do really like carrots, so a few carrots, ginger, kale, lettuce, some nice summer salads or springtime salads would be nice, bok choy, collards, arugula, squash and zucchini, summer squash and zucchini squash, as well as maybe a pumpkin or two just for fun, broccoli, cauliflower, cucumbers for all those summer salads, black beans. I eat a ton of black beans. I have never really grown black beans before, but that is something I would like to try this year. So I'm really interested to see if I can get a good harvest of beans. Probably the first year that I try to grow something, I'm not going to grow enough to, never buy a can of beans again, but I can practice the skill, I can build it up, and then years over years I can get better and better at it, grow more and more, start to store them up, and then eventually I will be able to eat, the majority of my food from my own harvest. Green beans, and then there's some herbs that I want as well. Basil, oregano, rosemary, thyme, chives, green onions, and lavender would be really nice as far as sort of herbs and spices. And I want to try some fruit as well. I'm really, really, really excited to try fruit. We do have some raspberry bushes in the garden now. They have sort of twisted and grown in between a couple of our garden beds. So part of the goal for this year is going to be transplanting some of those into a more intentional place so that they can have a spot in the garden that is the raspberry section, rather than them just sort of being squirrely and growing every which way around the garden beds. As well as I'd love to have some strawberries. I love fresh strawberries. Strawberries in the grocery store, they just don't cut it, especially this time of year. They're just not very good. And I would love to be able to grow some here and to have some fresh strawberries. That along with the raspberries, and I'd like to put in some blueberry bushes as well. Blueberries are one of those crops that takes several years to get established before you can get a good harvest. So even though I probably won't be able to harvest any blueberries this year, I do want to put in some blueberry plants with the hopes that in future years I'll be able to have a really good blueberry harvest. So those are the main food items that I plan on planting. I have to do an inventory a little bit later today to sort of see which seeds I have already, which seeds I need to buy, which things will be starts versus seeds. And I think some things we might do a dual method as well. Like I'm planning to start a lot of tomatoes and peppers from seed, since that is what I've already identified is the thing that I need to grow the most of this year, along with onions. So those I probably will start from seed, but I might also supplement with some seedlings that I get from the store or somewhere else as well, because I want to be able to ensure that I have a good harvest of those. Okay? So as you're sort of coming into the house, we've got a long driveway, and there was sort of a really full border garden with just some ornamental plants there. And over the past several years, my family has been working on adding some vegetable garden beds into that area because it is one of the sunniest spots in our yard. So we've got 2 garden beds there now, which will need a little bit of TLC to get them up to a good place for growing in this year. But we've got 2. We're planning on building 1 more so that we can have 3 garden beds, as well as there was an area that I cleared last year that had some just like hostas and ornamental things that we moved to another section of the garden. And that area last year did pretty well for some tomatoes and some squash plants. I'm thinking that that might be a good in-ground garden bed to start some of our perennial crops. So I'm looking at what would be the best option of things to grow in that section as well. So we've got sort of one right now in-ground bed, 2 raised beds, will be 3 raised beds. We also have a number of containers that we grow in. So we grow in some grow bags, or sort of felt, it's like a thicker cloth sort of felt material, and I believe they're about 10 gallons big, but you just fill them up with soil, and they act sort of as a raised bed garden, but smaller, you know, the size of, you know, maybe 2 buckets, you know. They're about the diameter of like 2 5-gallon buckets. So they're a pretty good size. And we last year tried to grow potatoes in them with some mixed success. So I think this year that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking at. If there's a better way to plant those things, I would like to see some different things growing in those. We also talked about setting up our container gardens up on a table so that there's less pressure from, you know, all the rabbits and bunnies and deers and all the things that wander into your yard and want to eat your garden. We do have quite a few animal friends that frequent our garden areas, so thinking about ways that we can make gardening simple, easy to manage, easy to maintain, but also how we can protect some of our harvests. So we're going to have in-ground bed, 3 raised beds, the grow bags or containers, which will probably be up on a table this year. We'll see if that reduces some of the pest pressure. And I just got a surprise that I think I'm not going to announce in this video yet, but it is a really cool new method of growing that I think could help us be really successful, especially for some of the things that our wonderful furry friends, by that I mean the wild kind, not the pet kind, love to come by and munch on. So getting things like our lettuces and peppers and maybe some of our fruits up off the ground into a container type system that I'm going to show you in a future video because it's really cool. I think will be another great way. Oh, maybe I will say. So I got 2 GreenStalks. They're like little planters with multiple pockets and multiple layers, and you can pour water in the top and then it filters down to the bottom. And I have seen another YouTuber that I watch who used these to grow fruit and flowers and veggies last year, and they were super successful, and I'm so excited to try them out. We did have something similar to that in previous years, but it got in disrepair. So I got 2 new GreenStalks that I think are going to be just the ticket for helping us to have that fun summer garden, you know, like vegetable garden, easy kitchen table garden, you know. Let me pick some basil, let me pick a little bit of lettuce, let me pick a little bit of this and put it in my bowl and bring it in the house and, you know, cook dinner. That is the idea. That is what we're hoping to get from that. So those are plants that we're planning to grow and garden areas that we're going to be using. So a couple different methods of gardening. And next, the thing that we have to figure out, what we're planting, where we're planting it. Now, when are we planting? I find that with gardening, especially with seed starting, I always feel like the best time to plant something is yesterday. I always feel like I'm a little bit behind the times, but I think this year I actually am managing to get right on target with what I need to do. I have looked up, and I will link some of these resources below, but I used the Farmer's Almanac to figure out what my last frost date is. And it's important to know your last frost date because that is, when you have a packet of seeds, the most typical way that it will indicate when to plant it. So, for example, I have a packet of Cinderella pumpkin. It says frost sensitive, 110 days to harvest, so after last chance of spring frost. So in order to know when to plant this, I have to know when my last chance of frost is. You can find this information online. There are usually really good estimates. They are just estimates. It's not, you know, an exact science. It's not going to say you will not get snow after April 15th. But it is based on historical records of weather data. It compiles all the information for your zone, where you are, and you can usually look this up by your zip code. I use the Farmer's Almanac to find my last frost date, which in my area is April 14th. So when I would want to plant this Cinderella pumpkin in the ground, anytime after April 14th. So as we're getting close to that date, you know, maybe whatever the previous weekend is, I'm not sure what the days are, if it's, you know, the 10th to 12th, 13th, whatever, I will look at the weather for the week ahead when we're getting close to that. And if there is no snow in the forecast, I will start to figure out which day I might be able to plant these out in the garden. So that is one way that I'm going to use these tools to figure out what plants to plant when. So you're going to need to know your last frost date. Also, you probably need to know your hardiness zone. So also you can look this up online. There are a lot of different tools that will tell you what your zone is based on your zip code. I use the USDA website, which I can link below, and it tells me that my zone is 6A. Just like last frost date, these are not an exact science, and you probably will find different answers on different websites, but you just need a general idea of what to plant or when to plant, because there's a grace period of about a 2-week window. So if you're a little bit early, a little bit late, as long as you're following the weather in your area, you're probably going to be fine. I also wanted to mention that there are really cool planting calendars or tools online that you can use to help figure things out. So going by the calendar that's on Johnny Seed's website, which I can link below as well, I can put in my last frost date, April 14th, and it gives me for a list of a whole bunch of different crops, onions, tomatoes, peppers, etc., etc. It'll say when I should start them, an approximate window of when I might want to start them indoors, and when I could plant them outdoors, all calculated based on that last frost date for that crop. So that makes it super easy. So what I'm going to do for my list of all the plants that I want to plant, I'm going to create, you know, probably a spreadsheet. If I can make it look cute, I'll probably insert a picture of it. I'll create a spreadsheet of all the things that I'm planting, when those need to be planted out according to their last frost date, which ones I'll start inside, which ones I will sow directly or put the seeds directly into the ground outdoors after frost. I'll just go from there. I'll use that to sort of track all the information, when stuff gets planted, you know, how long until it needs to get put outside. And then once I have all the information in one place, I can put them on my calendar and I can say, oh, here's all the crops that need to be planted 8 weeks ahead of time, like peppers. So all of the sweet peppers, hot peppers, and anything else that needs to be started 8 weeks out, I know that I need to do that by, you know, let me look it up. So, for example, for my last frost date of April 14, basil can be planted. We can start seeds for it 6 weeks ahead of setting out. Broccoli can be 4 to 6 weeks. Cabbage 4 to 6 weeks. Collards 4 to 6 weeks. Lettuce 4 to 5 weeks. Onions 8 to 10. So for onions, I really should have started onions in January because it says onions. January 6th to January 20th. January 6th to January 20th as the starting inside date, so that I could set them outside by 4 weeks before my last frost. So the thing is, we still have a bit of a window. Right now it's March 18th, so I still have 4 weeks before my last frost. So if I wanted to run to the garden center and get some onion starts, I could still put onion starts in the ground now, but I'm a little bit far past being able to plant onion seeds and have seedlings to put out. So essentially what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through all the plants that I want to plant, figure out what date those need to get started, and then I'm going to put on my calendar on certain days. So let's say March
17th is a good time to start tomatoes, which is yesterday. My ongoing joke, the best time to start seeds yesterday. Probably I will start mine next weekend when I have a little bit more time. So I will put on my calendar for next weekend to start tomatoes, peppers, and anything else that I know needs a long time indoors before it can be planted out. I think that's it. That's all I got. Thanks again so much for watching. This is Rena in the World, and I am so excited to get started with my garden for this year. Please hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my uploads. In the next couple of weeks, we are going to be starting seeds. We're going to be building our raised bed gardens. We're going to be building all of our garden containers and getting our growing areas ready, as well as doing some shopping for all of the plants that we're going to put in the ground. I am so thrilled that you are willing to share your time with me and go with me along this journey of building healthier world for ourselves, our families, putting some plants in the ground. If you are excited about gardening and want to learn more about what I'm doing, you can watch one of my videos until my next upload. I will link a video of the starting of my hydroponic garden, which is right behind me, and you can learn a little bit more about how I started a garden from my kitchen in January and have already some beautiful veggies ready to harvest. So thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.